All right. Welcome, everybody, to today's live stream where we are talking about the global financial crisis that has just started. And of course, I'm joined by a good friend of mine, Alex. How are you today?
Doing well. Thank you very much, Cyrus.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, everybody, today's an emergency live stream because what's so interesting about this is all of us have seen the impressive, just unbelievable moves from Donald Trump in the White House. And I want to just start off by giving a little bit of an opening dialogue here because I think it's a very interesting time in the United States. In today's live stream, we're going to be talking specifically about, what this means for the future of America. But of course, we live in a global economy. And so this moves from the White House certainly is going to have ramifications for the entire world. We're going to see every country around the world is now affected by these tariffs. Obviously, a big storyline here is going to be China. How is China going to respond? We have already seen a response from China's government, but how is that going to affect the Chinese economy? How is it going to affect the American economy? Is Trump's tariff plan really going to work? Is this going to work out long term for the Americans? And, one of the best financial guys that I know, a guy that I talk to about the markets a lot is Alex. So I'm really happy to have him in the stream today. And, it has been a while, Alex, since we've been on the live stream here on YouTube. It's been almost, I think, 8 months. Been a long layoff since last year.
Yeah.
So I want to welcome our regular fans that are tuning in. We're going to be doing more of these live streams in the future. And, if you have questions, send them in. But Alex, I'm going to start here. First, I want to get your reactions to the last 48 hours and just kind of your opening thoughts on this new global trade war.
Yeah. Deep breath, everyone. Deep breath, because this is going to take a while for this market to, we'll call it equalize. Now, the market clearly has spoken what it thinks of this. I'm going to call it an all-out global trade war here around the world. To say it's a tit for tat is an understatement. This is going to continue to hit every American, every Canadian, every importer, every exporter around the globe. And it's not going away anytime soon. So I suggest you guys listen up. We have some solutions for it that we'll talk about it throughout this program, but also to try to understand that this is going to affect every single person, their pocketbook, their business, you name it. We're going to go through it step by step today.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what is just so fascinating, and many of you know that I live here in the United States, and what part of the reason that I find this so interesting is the fact that, Alex, you'd be very surprised to understand how many Americans don't understand what a tariff means. They don't understand how a tariff functions. They literally have no clue about this. And I think the first and the most important chart that we need to go through, we're going to go ahead and bring this up. And I really want everybody to understand how much propaganda is coming out of the United States government and specifically this administration. And this is a very famous chart we're looking on the left. And this is what has been shown to the American public. Okay. We look at this and we say, certain countries will catch your eye, right? Right off the bat, Vietnam, 90%, Cambodia, 97%. You look at the United Kingdom, okay, 10%. So, the problem is that we live in a world right now. I'm going to bring this back up, but let me get back on screen here real quick. So we're going to break that chart down. Don't worry, I'll bring that back up. But I want to be on screen to show you this. We live in a world right now where people don't have a deep analysis of things. They just see things on the surface, and it's very easy to manipulate people. It's very easy to brainwash people, Alex. And I'm going to bring this back up and show everybody, because if you look at this, right, we're looking and saying, wow, Vietnam is ripping us off, right? They are charging us 90% tariffs. That is absolutely insane. You look at Indonesia, 64%, Cambodia, 97%. So this is what the Trump administration is doing. They are getting people angry by this. And then what they're trying to do, Alex, is they're trying to say, you know what, we're going to be the good guys because Vietnam is ripping us off at 90%. But look at how good Donald Trump is. I'm only going to charge you 46% tariff. Okay. That just shows you how good of a guy that I am. But I want you to look at this tweet that really just explains exactly how they calculated this, right? So I just figured out where these fake tariff rates come from. They didn't actually calculate tariff rates plus the non-tariff barriers as they said they did. Instead, for every country, they just took our trade deficit with that country and simply divided it by the country's exports to us. So again, we're using the country of Indonesia, $17.9 billion trade deficit with Indonesia. It exports to us are $28 billion. Simple math is 64%. And that is what Trump is claiming is a tariff rate. Trump is claiming 64% tariff. And the last sentence explains it. This is extraordinary nonsense. Alex, is this just amazing that the White House could calculate in this manner and just deceive the entire American nation?
Window dressing indeed. 'Tis the season. And that's exactly what they're doing here. I mean, I'm getting angry by just seeing what activities happen on Thursday and Friday. And I will later on in this program, as we pick up viewers here and reach the peak point, I'm going to really display what this market is all about, why I feel it's absolutely rigged. Why is it rigged against you, the viewer? I'm certain that you're feeling the pain today. If you haven't, then you must have shorted the market. And we can talk about that as well. But sitting here in China right now, we understand the consequences of this. And also the government has taken into consideration for the last few years that this could be coming to an economy near you and, of course, their economy. So, what China has done is they've invested in the Belt and Road Initiative, the BRI. These are the countries that have great trading relationships with China. Put geopolitical and political issues aside, these trade barriers are not in place. So if you're from, one of these countries or anywhere besides North America, I would say, pardon me, United States of America, you're not going to have to be hit with any trade barriers or any trade tariffs. Now, we're talking about a lot of the large importers and exporters around the world here. And here's where the absolute equalizer can happen overnight. We hear the administration complain about, we're ripping Americans off. China's ripping them off. Vietnam is ripping them off. Cambodia is ripping them off. You name it.
Yeah.
But we have to understand, what does that really mean? Okay. Does that mean when we send goods over there, we are dumping goods? We are ripping people up? No. In fact, when you're exporting an item from China, it will go onto a tariff list. And a tariff list is handled by the customs clearing agents on the other side of the water. So, in fact, that cost is not being, borne by the Chinese, even though it feels like it's a tax, as Trump would say, against the Chinese government. He's actually used that terminology before.
Right.
But once it's brought into the shores, just before it comes and passes customs, it's hit with the tariffs. Now, I'm going to say to you, for all those people out there say, well, yes, of course, this is going to stop the cheap goods from China. This is going to stop Temu. This is going to hit them big time. Not really, because those are small packages. Those are called low value consignment reliefs, LVCRs. And those are usually not duty, tax, or even stopped by customs in the local postal system. And if anybody says that they can stop, 900 million packages coming from China every quarter, good luck with that. That's an administrative nightmare. Back to you, Cyrus.
Yeah, no, thanks, Alex. I mean, I think we really need to bring a lot of truth to this discussion because, the problem is, Alex, I'm going to show you that this is a very typical tweet and sentiment that I see, very common for the majority of Americans. I mean, this very innocent tweet here. This is a lady that just says, here's Mandy. She doesn't really understand. Can someone explain this to me like I'm 5 years old? Why are people getting mad that President Trump is putting tariffs on countries that already charge the U.S. the same amount, if not more, in tariffs? Right. So this kind of plays into what, Alex, you just said. And again, I'm going to bring up that other chart, right? Because this is, unfortunately for Mandy and the vast majority of Americans, this is the chart that they're seeing. Again, they go back and they don't know the numbers. They just see a bunch of, very nicely, well made, right? The blue and the white offset with a little bit of the yellow. And, it's a nice diagram there. So, I mean, this is the art of United States propaganda. I always say this, we Alex and I, we talk about China a lot and everyone says, the propaganda coming from China. And it's like, man, no one has anything on U.S. propaganda. Like, we dominate that industry better than anybody in the entire world. And unfortunately, I'll give you a really crazy story, Alex. I was, with some other parents of mine from school, where after school, we took our kids to the playground. And this was about a month ago. And, so before this whole stock market is blowing up, and they said, this is amazing. Trump is making America great again. We're really going to stick it to those Chinese. We're going to make them pay that big tariff if they want to sell us anything. And I'm like, oh, I'm like, that's a really interesting statement you made. Um, how exactly is China going to be paying the tariff? And they said, well, let's take, for example, your $100 Nike shoes, Cyrus. I'm like, yes, give me this example. I'm really excited to hear this. And they said, well, instead of selling it for $100, what China's going to have to do is they're going to have to pay 25% tariff on that, right? So now China's going to pay an extra $25 to the U.S. government, which we can use to run the country, and then we still get our $100 shoe. I'm like, I got you. Okay, that's not how tariffs work. Okay, so tariffs are paid by the importer. So Nike, in this instance, they make their shoes in China, Vietnam, wherever they make them. They make them all over the world. They don't make them in the United States. But when they actually import that into the United States, Nike's going to be paying the tariff. And they're like, no, that's not how it works. I'm like, that's exactly how it works. That's exactly how the tariffs work. Tariffs are tax, right? So Nike's going to pay that $25, which means your $100 shoe is now going to cost what? And they're like, well, wouldn't it just still cost 100? I'm like, well, it could still cost 100 if Nike was a good company and just said, you know what, we're going to swallow this massive new cost that we have because we want to provide value to our consumers. But I said, but Nike's a publicly traded company. And if you've seen Nike's stock, it's been absolutely pummeled in the last couple of days. Well before, I mean, Nike was in a massive decline already because of the supply chain constraints. But I said, no, Nike's going to pass that cost on. And so now your shoe is going to cost a minimum of $125. And they said, but that's just making stuff more expensive for us, Cyrus. I said, light bulb, you got it. I'm glad we got there. You did it. You got to the end where you can understand this. And again, the theory here, Alex, and I know I don't need to explain this to you, but just so we can all be on the same page, the interesting thing here is, yes, we're going to tax all of these. We're going to tariff all these countries around the world because we're going to be bringing all of this manufacturing back to the United States of America. Alex, I got an amazing clip that we're going to play in a little bit that just kind of shows, exactly what that means to bring manufacturing back to America. But isn't that amazing? Just the basic level of understanding for most Americans, that they just don't understand what a tariff means and what this actually, this is basic economics, buddy. This is second grade math.
It's a beauty, isn't it? The dog and pony show through the White House. Hey, we're going to make you believers. Nice try. Great try, administration, ripping $4 trillion off of Americans' stock market portfolios in the matter of 48 hours. Yeah, no one's buying it. And clearly Wall Street and global financial markets aren't buying the BS either. This administration is going to have to stand up and take some responsibility here, because you have, in the last 72 hours, broken the top 5 most biggest single day losses in the Dow Jones history, not once, but twice. And you've done it with the S&P 500 as well. Now that shakes up the confidence of the average investor. Let's see. What is going to motivate an investor to go into a market and say, all right, we have Nike, we have Microsoft, we have Apple, we have Tesla. These are all American companies. Should be no problem to invest in them because, hey, it's made in America, right? Well, wrong. These are sold throughout other countries around the world. Let's talk Microsoft for a moment, and let's talk Apple for a moment.
Oh, yeah.
And let's look at them. How are they exposed? Okay, first of all, supply chain is going to be a serious issue here. If you're going to throw a 25% tariff or even higher into the 50s on a company that designed in California, but manufactured in, let's say, Shenzhen, it's going to be back on the ship towards the United States of America, and it's going to be slammed with a tariff. That's the start. Now let's talk about digital companies that are providing digital technology like Google. Well, hey, it doesn't have to just be physical goods. The European Union could wake up tomorrow. China could wake up tomorrow and say, all right, every Microsoft computer that is running their software, boom, across the board, 50, 60, 70, 85% tax, 100% tax. No problem. They can easily do that. And this is the problem here, is the voters' confidence, the shareholders' confidence, and of course, the investors' confidence has been shattered to the tune into the trillions. And it's not going to end here. We have this arrogance about us in the West here where we think, well, just shut the supply chain. Ha ha, we've beaten China. we can make running shoes here. No, you can't, and no, you haven't, and no longer will you be able to do that. Not for the prices, because 98% of all shoes are made outside of America. Just walk into a local Walmart or a Costco or somewhere like that, flip the labels around in the back and see where it is made. I'm not quite sure there's great refrigerator manufacturers or LCD manufacturers for screens or brake parts or even tires, for that matter, made in the United States of America. And here's the other thing, Cyrus, before I hand it back off to you.
Sure.
Is a lot of this stuff is not just one way brought into United States. It's not a consumable target. The United States is saying, well, everything that comes to China from China, we need to tariff it because it's impacting our market.
Yeah.
Some of the bicycle, I'll give you an example. There's a bicycle manufacturer on the East Coast of the United States. They import 85% of their parts to assemble and then to export that product out of United States of America. So in fact, get the tooling, get the gear, get the parts together, rebrand it, and then ship it off. That's not counted in the equation here. And we're seeing people are putting one and one together here. Back to you.
Yeah, Alex, I mean, this is such an interesting situation that we're seeing. I mean, I love chatting about this with you because, you and I study the markets. We invest actively. I mean, you guys are long-term fans, know that we are always looking at how this global economy works. I see a comment here that was interesting. It's like the American stock market was worse since it's worse than 2020 with COVID. This is worse, the crash than 9/11. And what's interesting about this, Alex, is, those are expected crashes, right? Like when 9/11 happens, you and I know, okay, tomorrow the stock market's going to get hammered. I remember us talking 5 years ago, amazing, incredible 5 years ago already. But, we knew in 2020 that the stock market was going to get hammered. But it that really excites us because, we know that it's a reaction to a specific event. 9/11, not in somebody's control. COVID, stuff happens, whatever. But companies were still making money, right? It's not like it's a bank crisis. Like, oh my gosh, this bank was cooking the books, and they're now, it's not a Lehman Brothers where they're cooking the books and they're not actually making any profit. I mean, we did very well during COVID because you can buy great stocks. Stocks are on a discount. But this is the first time in history that a U.S. president has just basically taken a bazooka and aimed it straight at the U.S. economy and fired it off. This is a massive self-inflicted wound. There is no positive way to spin this in any way. And I think what you're seeing is it's an incredible, shift. And this is I find this is one of the most unbelievable tweets that I saw in the last couple of days. This is from Benny Johnson. Now, Benny Johnson is a very, very far right political commentator, huge Trump supporter. And in the midst of this chaos, look at the pivot here, Alex. You're going to just find this shocking. Losing money means nothing. Digital ones and zeros. In the end, you won't miss any of it. I mean, wow. I mean, this is just this is unbelievable that, you have a Benny Johnson, someone that is, and this is what is so dangerous, I think, in the United States, is that you have this MAGA crowd that is so hardcore on their Trump support that they are blinded. I mean, here you go. I mean, I'm sure he owns a lot of Tesla stock. He's probably a huge Elon Musk fan. He's, he probably has seen his portfolio just get absolutely hammered yesterday. And then, now it's like, well, losing money is not a big thing. Like, let's just focus on our family and our health. And again, I mean, he's not wrong in one sense. Yes, money isn't everything, but it's amazing when, we're looking at just the economics, right? I mean, this is a self-inflicted wound from the United States. And I'm going to bring up an interesting one. This is from Ian Bremmer when he said, the British didn't understand what Brexit meant for their economy, but they wanted it. They voted for it and they've gotten it. Now it's America's turn. And I want to just say this because I do think this is an interesting example of democracy at work, because this is not a surprise from Donald Trump, right? I mean, I was hedging my bets, personally, on owning certain stocks. I knew that, certain industries are going to get hammered. I mean, I was fully anticipating this for the next few weeks. Why? Because this is the platform that Donald Trump ran on. I mean, he ran on the platform that he wanted to end globalization. And the American public voted him into office, and that's exactly what he has. That's what he's trying to do. He's literally trying to end globalization, and it is just outstanding to me that he can, do this. It's incredible.
Yeah,
Alex, back to you.
yeah,
Alex,
he's definitely.
Alex, I got
yeah,
my baby monitor. I need to go check on my kid real quick. I'm
no
going to let you take
problem.
the show. I'm still
yeah.
on the show. I just got to check on the little one. Alex, take it away, though.
All right.
By the way, guys, we've just passed 2,300 people in the live stream today. Amazing, incredible turnout for not being on a live stream in 8 months. We're so happy you're here. Alex, take it away. I need to sort out my kid real quick.
Yeah, no worries. No worries. So everybody, as we've been talking about this tariffs, I want to bring in some information so you guys can understand who I am if you've just seen me for the first time here. I've been in the financial markets since pretty much I could drive a car. Okay, so let's go back into the 1990s. I started trading in the 1990s, and then I became I would call it a professional derivatives trader and option trader. I moved to Monaco for almost 2 decades. That's Monaco, not Morocco, Monaco. Very powerful small country with a lot of very intelligent people in the banking business as well. If you know Monaco, you will clearly understand that it is a tax haven. And of course, it has some of the most sophisticated banking systems worldwide. While I was there, I learned something quite shocking that I never thought was possible. I didn't know was possible. I just thought trading the market, buying some stocks, selling some stocks, and make some money on day trading and potentially some long-term investing. What I found out is going to alarm you guys that this is not a conspiracy theory. This is not me trying to say to the audience, hey, this is BlackRock, rigging this market. This market is controlled. And I will explain to you to try to be as easy as possible to explain it to you. But I'm going to pull up a slide here when Cyrus gets back here. And it's going to show you the size of the world's derivatives market. If you haven't heard of the derivatives market, listen up, okay? And I'm going to tell you how we can help you guys out with that. The derivatives market has an estimated value of $700 trillion. That's $700 trillion. We'll bring the slide up in a moment. Now, what I discovered in Monaco and some of the banking systems that I am allowed, and you are allowed, and people are allowed to rightfully open up a bank account wherever they want. I discovered the option market and the derivatives market. And I quickly found out that this market, and Cyrus, if you could pull up a slide, I just, I uploaded it. You could see there. There we go.
Oh, nice. Perfect.
This is the size of the derivatives market, $700 trillion. Let that sink in for a moment here, okay? Now, yesterday, I could not get my face out of the computer because I was trading the derivatives and the options on the futures and the options on the index and the options on the stocks. Everything you can imagine, I was hitting right, left, center, up, and down because I have a skill in this market that was taught to me by one of Europe's largest, and I'm not going to say his name for personal reasons, but one of the largest derivative traders in Europe. That is a fact, an individual trader that has taught me about this market. And I'm going to be very clear with you guys here. The stock market is for dummies. Okay? Well, Mr. Broker, buy me Apple, sell me Apple. But what if you heard about the derivatives market where people were making bets against your trades, seeing your trades even before you've actually entered them into the system? Okay? There's books that you can read about that. But I want to be very clear about what I'm about to say here. There is a game going on in the financial markets that is controlled by the option market. I knew these markets were going to be where they were going to be probably on Wednesday evening, maybe Wednesday afternoon. And in fact, rolling back about 6 months ago, because we can forecast where the market is on the derivatives and option market. And you know what the crazy thing about this, Cyrus, is that the average American is kept out, and the average Canadian and most of the collective West countries are kept out of this market because the bankers run it.
Right.
So if you're an American in the United States, they will use excuses. And I hope everybody is listening to me. When you open up your brokerage account, you ask them, is it possible I can write derivatives or options? Now, some of them might say, yeah, you can open up a little bit of an option account, a margin account, or whatever. But the size and the magnitude that you should be allowed to open up and what you can open up outside of your other country is quite staggering. This is what is amazing, is most people in the United States cannot access the option market or the derivatives index market because most of the banks close these people off to it. And if you have stocks in your portfolio, read the fine print. You will notice that some of those stocks are lent out before short positions or long positions. It really bugs me and it really bothers me. I can pull back from this if you want, Cyrus, or I can keep going for another minute. Is that okay?
Let's hit this at the end. I want to go back to our trade war here, and I want to talk a little bit about more of our. Let's go back to our analysis here, because I want to bring up a couple of interesting more slides here, Alex, because I think it's really interesting here what we're looking at, because I want to bring up a guy that I think who knows a lot about this situation. I mean, this is Vice President JD Vance. I mean, this guy, if we could just go back to 2017 here. How about this tweet from JD Vance? Can't be repeated enough. If you're worried about America's economic interest, focus more on automation and education than trade protectionism. How about that for a tweet from JD Vance back, just about 8 years ago? Very different tune than what he's saying right there, right? What he's saying right now, Alex. And again, I think what we're seeing right now is, again, I think this shows a weakness in the United States political system, because, JD Vance, I mean, you can go and you can find all of the clips, with him speaking against Donald Trump and, not being, on the same page as a Donald Trump. But, when you get the call to be the vice president, he completely 180 flips on all of his stances, right? I mean, he just goes back to, basically just jumps on the train and just says whatever he wants to do. And I think it's just, there's such a weakness in the United States political system right now, because you have these. Right now, I'm looking at our two political parties, right? We have the Republicans that are led obviously by Donald Trump. Everybody is catering to Donald Trump and basically kissing his butt, to get close to him. I mean, somebody like a Marco Rubio, who's now Secretary of State. I mean, he has been very vocal against Donald Trump and his policies. But then, of course, he gets to advance his career and become Secretary of State. So you see a huge pivot, complete 180-degree pivot. There's no backbone in the United States. There's no backbone in U.S. politics. And I think, unfortunately, right now, what we're going to see from the Republican Party is you're going to just see people doubling down, and they're going to basically keep trying to lie to themselves and say that this tariff plan is going to work out. I want to shift this more to China now, specifically, Alex. We've got a really good, audience in here right now, and I want to bring up this tweet. I want to get your thoughts on this one. This is what Donald Trump said. China played it wrong. They panicked. The one thing they cannot afford to do. So, just to give everybody a little preference on what Donald Trump is referring to is we saw, obviously Trump launched his trade war. He hammered every single country in the world. He was even hammering uninhibited islands that were full of penguins. Now they're subject to a 10% tariff as well. So, I mean, you just see this crazy reaction from Trump. But what happened is that China responded with a retaliatory tariff. And this is a very common playbook that we see from China. The simple fact that they always will never initiate, but they will most certainly retaliate. And that is a very, core principle from China. I think China is always open to win-win solutions. I think that China would love to do trade with the United States. But interesting enough, I think that China is a lot less reliant on the United States than what Donald Trump and the Republicans want you to believe. And so I want to get your thoughts. Obviously, you're on the ground in China for the last 5 years, Alex. really, I'm gonna call it, you're the unofficial mayor of Chongqing over there, buddy. You've really helped
Thanks.
put that city on the map. I mean, we can talk a little bit about that later, but got a lot of famous celebrities rolling through Chongqing in the moment. But what do you think about Donald Trump's tweet? And let's talk a little bit specifically about China. I'd like to get your thoughts on that.
Hmm. You know, if we're talking about China, and you have to understand the average person here has a savings rate much higher than most of these Western countries. They're savers here.
Right.
And you've heard that saving, save for a rainy day or save for a day of tariffs.
Right.
It's here. And they don't give a damn.
Right.
They don't give a damn. If they don't need to buy Nikes or help support Starbucks bottom line or KFC or McDonald's or buy an iPhone, just
Right.
watch the Chinese consumer overnight. Overnight.
Yeah.
They will immediately walk away from these brands and say, nope, for the country. Now, here's the difference. American cars used to sell a lot here over the last 10 years, okay? And if you see these tariffs, they're so focused on the automotive industry in North America. That industry is about to be finished,
Yeah.
okay? Now, you might say, what are you talking about, Alex? General Motors and Ford, everybody, they're okay. They're selling cars. It's over in China for these companies. I don't even know why they're even here manufacturing any of their cars. Maybe some of their parts manufacturing they're doing to send to the United States. But no one is interested in these cars whatsoever because they have been replaced by the new energy vehicles, NEVs, not because this is a green initiative or a push for environmental things here. No, new energy vehicles are better. They are more economical, and they are actually what the young consumer wants in China. Good luck getting a young consumer to buy a car that they have to put petrol in, doesn't have state-of-the-art zero gravity seats, a 1,000 kilometer rapid charge for the battery in less than an hour. It's over. So if you take the big three out of it, now have a look at Boeing stock yesterday. Have a look at Boeing stock, okay? Absolutely decimated. And that's a country that is just deep in debt because, of course, their track record. Right. So we're talking the big three. Then you throw on the Boeing airline, which China is not obligated to buy, Boeing. They can buy Airbus or they can start flying their Comac C919 domestic planes here. No problem. So China has actually, I don't want to say that they're bulletproof, but they're not going to come out of this one with damage. And remember, it was American that shot it first and said, aha, you guys deal with those tariffs. That's fine. Okay. China gets the point. But now they're coming back to you, not by one country, but by many countries. And that means that if you're an exporter in the United States, you better find a new market real quick in a country that still respects trading, because that was broken. And if you look at the financial markets again, trillions of dollars has walked out of your wallet. If you haven't been affected, you might say, well, tariffs aren't really going to affect me because I don't want to buy this or I don't need to buy that from China. It already hit you in the pocketbook for the tune of 3,000 or 4,000 Dow points. Enjoy.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Alex, I think that this is stuff that we've been talking about for a long time because, when I go back to China every summer with my family and we make these vlogs and we show people what China is really like on the ground, one of the things that I had noticed last year specifically was a very large rise in Chinese demand for domestic products. And that is such a huge shift that we've seen, in my 18 years of going to China. 2007, the first year that I arrived in China, every legacy car brand, Buick and GM and, even our Europeans, Mercedes, BMW, Audi, these were all very desirable for Chinese. They all paid cash. It was an honor. It was a privilege to have these. It was a status symbol, right? If you could have an American Buick minivan in China and you paid cash for it, you were the man. I mean, that was a lot of face, if you will, in China. That has been completely replaced now, right? Within 5 years, I don't think you're going to see a Western auto brand in China. It's all going to be replaced with domestic companies. And, there's definitely a much bigger pride, from Chinese nationals wanting to support, their local brands. Look at like even a clothing company like Li Ning. They're making, great quality stuff, and it's very much appealing to that younger Chinese crowd. So I want to bring up another graph that I think is really interesting here, and this really shows you, China's customers are now mostly outside the United States. So here you go. U.S. tariffs are a short-term pain for Chinese factories, but the long-term picture is very different. So yes, obviously, China exports a lot to the United States. But one of the key things here, Alex, as well, I mean, you can look at this graph, you can see all of the different, industries, whether it is, I mean, obviously consumer electronics would be the biggest, that's 22%. But you look at all of the other ones and, down to chemicals, base materials, all of these semiconductors, mineral products. I mean, what's very interesting here with this graph, and what I want people to understand is this goes back to a very strategic planning from China's government. When this is why they invested in the Belt and Road Initiative, right? This is why they built up a trading alliance with over 150 countries around the world. My latest video was talking specifically about Africa and how China has specifically and strategically gone into Africa and built up these relationships that now really give China a tremendous amount of control and leverage for the future. I was chatting with my neighbor yesterday. He's 76 years old. He was in consumer electronics for his career. He was a salesman. He did very, very well, did a lot of deals working with Japan, Korea, China, doing electronics. I mean, he was big in the 80s and 90s, selling a lot of stuff, at that time. And he said that his son was actually working, for the U.S. State Department in Africa. And he said, 15 years ago, my son was like, Dad, China is coming in and building all this stuff. Like we're not building anything. The U.S. government's here in China. We don't do actually, or sorry, the U.S. government's here in Africa. We actually don't do anything here. Like we're not building anything. We're not building relationships. We're not building roads. We're not, but China's here. And he's like, Dad, I really think, the future of Africa is going to be China. And we literally had lunch yesterday together. And he said, Cyrus, my son was telling me that 15 years ago. And I said, yeah, interesting enough. I mean, that's only growing from there, right? And so I think what you're seeing here, Alex, again, is the United States is really painting themselves into a corner, because I think the entire world is really thinking about more trade without the United States. And I think the United States has isolated itself. We look at the entire European Union, not happy with the United States, not happy with how Donald Trump and this Ukraine war is going. Obviously, Europe has turned their backs on America. Look at Canada. I was in Canada earlier this week on a business trip, your home country, but I know you haven't been back in a while. But I was in Toronto, talking to a lot of people, and I mean, a very, very different sentiment. I mean, it's very interesting. Even Canada, as you would know, I mean, it's not a very patriotic place in the sense that you don't see a lot of Canadians wearing Canadian flags. Like, yeah, I'm proud to be Canadian. It's much more relaxed society. But it's changed. That's changed a lot. A lot of Canadians. Very, very. This is one thing that Trump has done, is he has united the country of Canada. And this talk of the 51st state, and even Elon Musk tweeting out, Canada is not a real country. It just makes the United States government look like an absolute clown show when you have politicians like Trump and people like Elon Musk tweeting stuff like that. So I think this really does provide a great opportunity for China. I totally disagree. I think Trump is lying here. I don't think China played it wrong. They didn't panic. They will retaliate. And guess what? The United States consumer is going to get hammered with this. This is not going to be a win for the United States that he thinks it is. I'll tell you one last thing before I turn it over back to you, Alex, is I had another meeting this week with a Chinese manufacturer. This is a lady here. She lives in Las Vegas. For the last 10 years, she has run a company where she basically does everything in the home improvement sector. So thinking about flooring, tile, vinyl floors, any type of materials that you need to build your house. We were having lunch on Tuesday afternoon, and she said, Cyrus, she's showing me her WeChat. All of her suppliers are back in mainland China. They said, hey, but these tariffs, we're raising prices by 30% on vinyl flooring. So, people that are building houses in the United States, you are about to get hammered with a bunch of new prices. You go to Home Depot to buy stuff, you get, start loading up now. See if you can lock in those prices. Hopefully you've signed a contract if you're building a house and you've locked in your prices, because if not, you're about to get hammered with a massive price increase. Back to you, buddy.
I really feel bad. I watch it on the financial markets, and days like Thursday, days like Friday on the financial markets are big days for derivative traders like me. Huge days, okay?
Yeah.
And the other side of me says, oh man, these consumers, these business owners, these travel agents, these home construction companies, these small business owners, look out. Look out. You can't front load like big store suppliers and shop suppliers like Walmart, but you are going to get decimated, and it is going to come. China is not going to back down from this. Canada's not going to back down from this. European Union is not going to back down from it. I think the funniest joke I heard was, are they going to put tariffs on all the military gear that they're bringing over to these NATO countries? Do they have to pay tariffs on those? That was a joke. But listen, as Cyrus just said, the alarm bells have to be. I don't know what's going to happen Monday. Monday is the big test.
That's a big test for sure.
If there's a big rebound in the market, maybe Trump, watch his words, because he's already kind of hinted, wow, Vietnam's, they want to talk to us. He's very charismatic on how he displays this, very charismatic with your money, with your business, with your economy, with your tax dollars and your deficit. He's very charismatic with all that. And trust me, I'm not a guy to badmouth the administration. I understand the American first, but the American first could be the American first that bankrupts you. And it is bad news. There is no good news to this. I don't care how much money they're bringing in from tariffs. That is not going to offset what is about to happen. And if Monday is an absolute shit show on the market, look out.
Watch out.
Because then you're in big trouble. And we remember, the sell-offs during the pandemic.
Yep.
I mean, the market just recovered recently.
Right.
And then we saw the global financial crisis. This will make the global financial crisis look like, a kindergarten. I mean, this has ramifications to go through every single business that you can imagine. And it will indeed, because we have to look at it from another aspect. What if the supply chains come to a halt? You might have 1 or 2 months of, build up a supply, but those car manufacturing plants that are importing, we'll call it assembly parts. And remember, next time you hear this, Detroit manufacturer of automobiles. No, Detroit assembly plant. That means they're bringing in parts. It's like Lego. It's the Lego economy on the East Coast there. Bring them in, stack, pack, rack, sell them, move them on.
Right.
But this is going to hit your automotive industry. This is going to hit your construction industry. This is going to hit your airline manufacturers. This is going to hit Apple. Apple is exposed to the max here. And Tesla. Now, Tesla might be able to sell its cars in China, right, without, tariffs. But there's an issue here. How long was that going to go on? What I found very reckless was, we'll hold TikTok ransom here and see if we can get a better deal out of the Chinese. And we'll just, move the software asset to the shores of the United States of America. Imagine if that came out of the mouth of a Chinese government person that says, Microsoft looks pretty good. Let's just transfer all the intellectual property and all the software from Microsoft over, and maybe the Americans will give us a better deal on a trade deal. That's what's going on here. And that's the mentality that we're talking. I'm really shocked to hear it. It really pisses me off, because the average American Westerner, I'm saying, is just going to, Brexit is nothing compared to
nothing.
This is going to be this is
Yeah.
you're gonna get hammered.
Well, I think, I mean, I have an interesting graph here that we're going to bring up here, and it just shows you. So this again, China's actual tariff rate was actually only 7.5%, but the Trump's minions bungled it, used AI to claim it was 67%, thus slapped a 34% tariff on them. China now has increased its tariff from 7.5 to 34. Trump instantly made China's tariffs 4.5 worse. He's an idiot, costing us trillions. And I think this is, this is a great tweet. And again, we're really hammering home the truth here, for people to really understand, Alex, what is going on. And I think there's just so much disinformation out there from the US government. And I think I'm going to give a prediction on what's going to happen here, because I think Trump is in a very dangerous position, because again, this is propaganda when he says that Vietnam is wanting to bargain. It's not that they're wanting to bargain. They're obviously going to give a response to this massive tariff that you've just, released on them. So what Trump's going to have to do is he's going to have to try to save face, because he's a narcissist, and he's going to try to, he can never lose, right? He always has to, portray that he's going to win. So what Trump's going to do is he's going to come out and he's going to be like, see, I did this tariff war, and it's basically this negotiation tactic. Now Vietnam wants to have a meeting with me. And by the way, we've had this meeting. It's a fantastic meeting. It was a great meeting, love Vietnam, fantastic meeting. And we've agreed that we're going to stop the tariffs. Well, that's not a new deal. You basically, you say you're going to hit him with tariffs, then you have a meeting and you reverse the tariffs that you already put in. There's no deal. It's just you basically backing down. But he's going to spin that as that he has made some incredible, negotiation, and that he's some master dealer. But the problem is again, I love what you said here. And I mean, look at the VIX, right? Look at the VIX, absolutely skyrocketed. This is, you can have these political commentators, trying to spin this. Oh, don't worry, this is one step backwards for 3 steps forward for America. No, a stock market doesn't react like that. This is worse than, what was this, the third worst, decline in stock market history. And again, what's concerning here is, when COVID declines, sure, like we know that okay, that's just that, we're pretty sure that's going to bounce. I mean, we know that's going to bounce back, right? The stock market always does bounce back, but it is just amazing that people, they just really don't understand that. Alex, I'm gonna bring one more graph up here. This is quite interesting, because this is, we've got receipts on Donald Trump. If Kamala wins, you are 3 days away from the start of a 1929 style economic depression. But if I win, you are 3 days away from the best jobs, the biggest paychecks, and the brightest economic future the world has ever seen. And this is unfortunately the point where we are in the United States politics is, you can basically, Trump just says whatever he wants to say, right? I mean, he has a track record of that, right? Look at how he dealt with Israel, right? He's going to go, you know what? We're going to just take over Gaza. We're just going to turn it into the Riviera of the Middle East. It's going to be great. It's going to be beautiful. Love it. Fantastic. He just kind of throws out whatever he wants to say. And, that's the simple reality. I mean, look, we've already seen layoffs. I think Stellantis, they already laid off 900 workers because of this massive trade war between US and Canada. So, I mean, these are the blue collar workers that would have voted for Donald Trump and believed this. And unfortunately, I think it goes back to that tweet earlier that I shared, really about Brexit. This is, the British didn't understand it. It was a disaster for them to leave the European Union, but they wanted it. They voted for it. Now they've gotten it. And unfortunately, this is America's turn. This is what they voted for. And I think this really shows you the dangers of democracy when you have a system that can produce someone that really is just not, he just doesn't know what he's doing. I think it's as simple as that, Alex, in my opinion. Trump has no clue what he's doing in the White House. It goes back to that first graph that we showed where his team came up with this blatant propaganda, basically looking at the trade deficit. I mean, of course, the United States runs a trade deficit with these countries. Vietnam is not, they don't have as many consumers that are going to be buying a large amount of American products. Therefore, there's a trade deficit. And also, a trade deficit's good because guess what? That means that they need to have US dollar to buy stuff, which keeps your global reserve currency, which I thought it's kind of an oxymoron here, right? It's a catch-22. We don't want to have a trade deficit, but yet we want to have the US dollar as the global reserve currency. Those two contradict each other. You can't have them both. So, I mean, Alex, I think we're in I agree with you. Monday's the big day. If you see another massive decline on Monday, watch out, because I think that means that Trump has lost this market. and he is going to be in a world of heat because I believe that his supporters will start to turn on him. Because if you're losing your job and your portfolio has been hammered by 30%, what else is important to you right now, right? If you can't put money on the table and food and inflation and costs are going through the roof, you're not going to, we need to see some results. Back to you, buddy.
That's the bad news. The results are going to be catastrophic. As I was watching the trade go into the late day and then the after hours market, no end in sight. Imagine that 2,200 handle downforce on the Dow Jones. The Dow Jones. Now, you guys might say, well, why you guys keep talking about the stock market? The stock market is the pride and joy of the United States of America. That's where they get their liquidity. That's where they get their money.
Sure.
That's where they raise their IPOs. That's where they try their innovation. Good luck having an IPO coming out over the next few months. It's going to be catastrophic. Now, as I was saying, trading derivatives for almost 20 years here, I do see a lot of stuff that you guys don't see in the market.
Yeah,
it's very clear. I was on the Duran a few months ago, and I predicted exactly what is going to happen here. And I would say, probably very close to the timing of it. Sometimes, if you've seen before in the first administration, when Trump was in his first term, he tried the tariff, we'll call it approach. It worked for a little bit, tit for tat on a few countries. The market got rattled, but it got used to it. This time it's broken. And you can see the volatility index, and maybe you can pull up. I think I sent you a photo, if you don't mind pulling it up.
The art of the trade.
I'm going to call this. Yeah, I'm going to call this the art of the trade, guys. Okay. Now you see there, you got derivatives, options, and futures. If you haven't heard about them, you need to, because these are the people or the traders that are ahead of this market. We're always ahead of this market. All the time, after hours, before hours, weekends. You got to wonder, why is the U.S. option market open even before the market is even open pretty much in Asia? Because this is where the big money and the real money is traded. Now, you're going to find most banks in the United States, or I'll call it collective West countries, will not open up this opportunity for you. They won't talk about it because that's their game. I'm serious. I am selling my option positions sometimes to the world's largest banks. They are buying some of the options I'm selling. So I put my email down there, guys. If you want to know about this stuff, take that email down. That's my personal email. Just send me an email. We can talk about it. And you can probably pull that off now, Cyrus. It's cool. But anyway, my email is there. And I encourage anybody that has had enough of this market, been blasted, been kicked in the you-know-what, email me, because I have 20 some years of experience in this derivatives market, and I am tired of seeing the common man and woman be dragged out of this market on the sake of some showboating by administrations. This is your cash, your capital that has been taken from you. I mean, you imagine being a Boeing shareholder yesterday? Did you see what Boeing did? I don't know if we could pull up a graph on Boeing, Cyrus, if it's possible. But we are talking some serious companies here that got smoked. And there are ways to protect yourself. Once again, send me an email. We'll talk about it. I've been training people for years about how to, not get absolutely decimated on the market. Now, moving forward, Monday is a big day. I hate saying that always. Monday. Usually the shit show starts on Mondays because it's the overhang of the weekend. We have to watch the news flow here in the next 24 hours to see what is coming, because China, they retaliated. Now who's next? Is it going to be the European Union? Is it going to be, some of these other countries follow suit? If it is, and everybody is going to, pretty much carbon copy what the United States does, then it's bad news. It's bad news. There's no way to say it. It's bad news. And I think, Cyrus, what we have to also take into consideration is when markets, whether it's inflation, whether it's oil and gas, when these markets get hit by volatility, they get damaged and they take a long time to recover. Is the American consumer or the average person, do they have enough savings to weather the storm? Probably not. And they will be the victims because somebody was selling this market down yesterday.
Yeah.
Now, you might say, well, the bankers are smart. They're buying. Then guess what? The other 8% that is owned by the consumers was, as we say, in this type of market, there's one small exit and everybody was trying to get out of it yesterday. We were so close to having a limit down. And if you guys aren't familiar what a limit down is if these exchanges get to the 7% mark or 8% mark, whether it's the NASDAQ or the S&P 500, mark my words, if you hear a limit down on the market, look out, because it's going to be brutal. And we had one of those limit downs during, I think it was during either the COVID, it was happening around that time or just before that. But I know for the markets that were the financial crisis, we had those limits down in 2008. And look at how many years it took the market to come back. Probably a decade, at least a decade to come back.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely going to be interesting to see. So, I think for everybody, we're in a very, the future of the global economy is at risk right here. And again, I mean, the United States, this is just unprecedented. I think it feels very different from a 2008. I mean, even a 2008, right? Okay, Lehman Brothers, like there's underlying reasons we can see why this crashed, right? Lehman Brothers was cooking the books. The U.S. overexposed itself with all of this debt, in the housing industry. That's understandable. There's a reason for that. Obviously 9/11 short-term crash. I mean, that recovered very quickly. I mean, it's a one-time event. COVID. I mean, again, you had things shut down, but companies were still profitable, right? People were still buying Apple products. People, were still, you saw like stocks like Zoom. Obviously, it went through the roof, 4x, very quickly because there's a lot of money to be made, during 2020. And so you can look at these certain sell-offs and they're very different. And I think this feels very different for everybody because there is no plan from the White House. This is all a smoke show. And I think what's unfortunate right now is that a lot of people are going to be eating their words very soon. A lot of these very far right wing, hardcore MAGA supporters, they're basically going down with the sinking ship, saying, look, everything's going to be great. One of the biggest guys that I follow that has been almost comical is Anthony Pompliano, who's a very big crypto guy, one of the biggest crypto guys on Twitter. He's got 1.7 million followers. And he is, very, very bullish on this. He's just trying every day to, save face. And I said, this is the modern day, the emperor in new clothing, where, Donald Trump is coming out and saying, we're making America great. And it's funny because you see his tweets. I mean, you know that he's getting hammered, and he just says, hey guys, what was the best thing that you watched or listened to this week? Let's share some positivity. It's like, like, yeah, no one's talking about that, right? That what a great way to try to pivot and save face. But I want to kind of, this is a great point in our show. I want to play a video here, Alex. Again, we've had an amazing turnout, close to 4,000 people joining us here today. I know this was going to be a hot topic. I'm so glad that we could bring this to you, but I want people to understand exactly why this is not going to work out. And let's go back to the simple premise here, because what Donald Trump is basically promising the people is he's saying that, guess what? We are going to bring back American manufacturing, right? We're going to make America great again. We're going to bring back all of these manufacturers. And here's the simple thing. It's just not going to happen. You cannot manufacture like we used to. This isn't the 1950s where America was making refrigerators and toasters and all of these different things, right? It's not how this is, was made. So let me play this clip for you so you can actually see this.
What? Okay. Hi, I am the founder and CEO of a US-based footwear company that has 12 US employees and has created fully convertible high heel technology. where do you manufacture? Our product is obviously really unique, and so we require specialty injection molding, which is only really available at scale for footwear in China. Why? Don't you manufacture in the USA? So we actually don't have scaled footwear manufacturing or really apparel manufacturing of any kind in the US. Okay, well, I think we should. Yeah, I mean, that would be really great. We'd be able to manufacture in much faster times and have more direct control over our supply chain, but we physically don't have manufacturers here. Okay, well, what if I change your import rate from 10% to 99%? We still wouldn't have US manufacturers here. Yeah, I think I'm gonna do it right now. Why? Look, I don't think we should be so reliant on China. So if you're gonna insist on manufacturing in China, I'm gonna charge you 99%. Okay, to be clear, I'm not insisting on manufacturing in China. It's just the only place I could manufacture. So not the USA? No, not right now. I mean, if you want to like invest in making some manufacturing facilities, it would probably take a couple years and several $1 million. But if you want to do that, I mean, we could talk about it when those are ready. No, I'm gonna do it right now. I'm gonna do it right now. But I mean, a 60 to 99% tariff could like bankrupt a lot of businesses. You should have thought about that before you started manufacturing in China. Again, there's not really anywhere else that could manufacture a product like that's what they specialize in as an economy. Okay, well, what about like, I don't know, Vietnam? Can you go to Vietnam? That would be better than China. Well, as people in retail will tell you, it's actually not that simple. It's not apples to apples because like a production minimum in China is 200 pairs per shoe, for instance. And in Vietnam, it would be 3,000 pairs per shoe because unlike China, they don't have their own material suppliers. And so they have to import all the materials from China still to just make them in Vietnam. And so it only makes sense to import them at that cost if they're doing it in bulk. So small brands that can't make 3,000 pairs per run would get squished. What I'm hearing is I should also tariff Vietnam. That's really not what I'm trying to say. Actually, why don't I just tariff everywhere and everything so that you have to make it in America? Again, that's not really an option. Look, if you're not manufacturing in America, you should be punished for that, okay? So maybe just pay the tariff, all right? Okay, but business models are fundamentally built on product cost, and a 99% tariff would double our product cost, so it would fundamentally change our entire business. That is really sounding like a you problem. Okay, I mean, I guess I can try to figure it out. We already had to figure out, how to pivot through the pandemic and supply chain crisis and the last trade war and the recession. So, I mean, I can do another pivot. I can't. Great, cool. Yeah, you do that.
All right, so that clip goes on for a little bit longer, Alex. But I mean, it's a long clip. It's about 5 minutes long. And what I want people to understand is this is incredible because I had a guy. There was a medical doctor that had sent out a tweet, and he said, Cyrus, if we just put a little bit of effort into this, it's not hard to recreate all of the supply chains domestically here in the United States. And I'm like, oh my Lord, this is a guy that has a PhD. Like you're a doctor? I mean, dude, you've got to just stick to being a doctor, right? I mean, I'm never going to question your medical skills. Maybe you're fantastic, but I am going to question your common sense because you are living on another planet if you think that all of these companies can just recreate these supply chains. And Alex, I mean, I think that's what I just want people to understand is that this is a pipe dream, right? This is a pipe dream that makes absolutely zero sense because, the best example is Apple, right? And I was talking to somebody yesterday about this, and I said, look at why has Apple become one of the most valuable companies in the world? One of the biggest and most successful American stories is because of China. Right. It specifically for two reasons. Number one, it manufactures in China, which is a tremendous advantage. And it's not so much the cost of manufacturing, because as you know, Alex, the cost of Chinese employees has risen tremendously over the last 10 to 15 years. It's not a cheap country. It's not like they're making pennies, we hear this slave labor and all this nonsense from Western media. Chinese workers have great compensation, and it is increasing. Look at the charts, look at the data. It's increasing every single year. They have more benefits, they have pensions. and they have insurance. I mean, it's not cheap to manufacture. But Tim Cook, one of the best speeches he gave, he said, people think we go to China because it's cheap. I don't know where they get that information. China stopped being a cheap country many years ago to manufacture. We go there specifically because there's not another country in the world that has as the advanced engineers that can do the tooling that we need. He specifically said that in America, we could fill a couple classrooms with these advanced tooling engineers, whereas in China, we can fill multiple football fields. Again, this is a quote directly from Tim Cook, and that's the strategic advantage. You saw Apple go to India. Okay, we're going to start moving production to India. Yeah, guess what? 50% of the phones produced didn't pass the quality control. Massive problems, and I mean, that's exactly what that lady said, right? It's not as easy because, you can't just, pack up and let's go to Vietnam. Let's go to another country. It's the China has spent 4 decades building these supply chains. And I think that is what, for a company like Apple, they have spent tens of billions of dollars, multiple tens of billions of dollars building these factories, building these supply chains. I mean, this would be a significant cost to them. And then, you just look at all of the regulations, look at all of that. I mean, even if Apple said, you know what, tomorrow we're going to do it, we're bringing everything back to the United States, you're looking at a 10-year plan, realistically, minimum 10 years before they could, fully remove themselves from China and set up here. The cost would be extravagant. Shareholder value wouldn't be there. It wouldn't be as valuable. It's as simple as that. And that's why I, for one, have always been one for globalization. I think globalization has been a great thing for every consumer, right? Alex, we can buy goods from any country in the world. We live,
fantastic.
We can make money online. We can buy things from other countries. And, I think another thing that I had shared earlier in a previous video I made was J.D. Vance's speech on globalization. In his mind, he said globalization has failed because richer countries were supposed to continue getting rich while the poorer countries basically stayed at manufacturing. We want the poor countries to basically manufacture all the stuff for us rich countries. But that didn't work out, didn't it? He said China started actually rising up. And then they started doing what? Instead of being manufacturing, they said, you know what? We can design, we can build, we can manufacture, we can launch. And that, exactly like you had alluded to, look at a BYD right now, right? We got another YouTuber, iShowSpeed, close to 38 million subscribers, in your city there, Chongqing. He's all over China. And I mean, he's putting BYD on the map, showing these absolutely phenomenal cars. And that's the pivot that you've seen from China. China is not this, poor manufacturing country. And that's the pivot that we've seen, right? Now China's like, hey, we don't need to just manufacture your Teslas. We're going to make our own brand. It's going to be better than Tesla, and people are going to want it. Hence why the U.S. government has these tariffs against you. Tariffs against that, and they're trying everything they can to restrict BYD from entering in because it would decimate the U.S. Auto industry. If American consumers could get access to these Chinese EVs, they absolutely would do it.
Indeed, they would. Indeed, they would. So I just want to tell everybody, Monday, something to watch out for. Get ready for it. Limit downs. If you hear this, the circuit breakers, if they go in on Monday, I'm not trying to alarm anyone, but usually if it's going to happen, it'll happen usually on the third day. So level one circuit is minus 7% drop, trading halts for 15 minutes. Level 2 is minus 13%, trading is another 15-minute hold. And level 3 is a minus 20, trading halts for the rest of the day.
Right.
If you think that is possible, just go have a nice quick Google of Boeing stock on Friday on how much that thing was down, and you'll get a very clear indications on where we're heading. If we could bring my thing up one more time, if you guys have any questions about market stuff, I'm going to be building an email list out to you guys. There it is. There's my email, admin@reportify.com, admin@reportify.com. Keep that handy. If you're having a tough day on Monday, please contact me and we can talk about what you guys can do to get through this. I'm hoping that we will see a rebound in the market and cooler heads will prevail on Monday. But if this administration decides to double down, then what I've just said is very possible. The limit down market-wide circuit breakers will kick in and we are again in no man's land. We don't want to be there. And we came so close on Friday, so close with 2,200 points down on the Dow, So close. You can feel it as a trader, as a derivative trader with over 20 years experience. If we were going to get into the 2,500, 26, 27, even 3,000 points, look out, because there is no bottom at that point. They're just going to let this market slam down there. And I can see by a lot of the comments here that there are people that are concerned about it. Some say get in, buy the dip, the usual kind of things. But we don't know where the bottom of this is, because we are talking global trade here. Global trade is affected, not one or two countries, just like what happened during the first administration that Trump was running. Now they're all in. They're all in, Cyrus, all in.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Anyway.
Well, guys, I want to thank you all for being here today. It's been an amazing live stream, and Alex will have to do more of these. It's been great chatting about this. So everybody, let's look towards Monday. Wanted to give you a little bit more insights into really behind the scenes. You know, I think in today's live stream, we really exposed the propaganda from the U.S. government, you know, in dealing with these tariffs. I mean, this is you will not find a single economist that's going to agree with Donald Trump's tariff plan. You know, it's just anybody that understands basic economics can see the writing on the wall. Unfortunately, you know, I go back to that earlier tweet that I had shared, you know, from Mary, you know, where she just doesn't know, you know, she said, gosh, I you know, can somebody explain this to me? All these countries from around the world are ripping us off. We should be doing the same. No, you know, that's unfortunately the propaganda that has blinded, you know, over half of this country in the United States. I think that, in my opinion, I think, Alex, you'd probably share the same sentiment. I think China's in a position of strength after this. We see that China, the big news earlier this week, meeting with Korea and Japan, you know, to talk about how they are going to work with more trade to circumnavigate Trump's tariffs. Trump is single-handedly driving, you know, many other countries around the world to work with China. And I think that you're seeing a lot of countries just saying, look, we can do trade without the United States government. We can do trade without, you know, different, you know, sorry, my kids are walking in. We can do trade in different areas around the world. And I think that the U.S. has to be very careful right now. You know, its reputation on the international stage is declining faster than anyone could have imagined. I think Donald Trump is really putting Americans in a very difficult spot. And I think it's something that we're going to have to look forward. I think Monday's going to be the big day. You know, obviously I'm with you, Alex. I'm hoping for a bounce back. I mean, I would be nice to see, or else this market is going to get completely out of control, and it's going to really become very, very dangerous. And we don't know where that bottom is going to be. So stay vigilant, guys. You know, just arm yourself with the truth. You know, that's why we had an emergency live stream today, because we wanted to really help dissect this. I had a lot of people on Twitter asking me, well, how did they come up with these tariff rates? Well, we're going to break it down for you. So that's exactly what it is. I hope that everybody enjoyed today's live stream. And Alex, thanks for your time today as well, and coming on the show, buddy.
Take care.
All right, you got it. Thank you, everybody. We'll do a nice little show ending here, and we'll see you all in our next video soon.